Okay, you just had an opportunity to brainstorm a little bit about what you thought the good things and the bad things were about designing our government around federalism. So, when you can kind of compare your list to what I'm going to go over, I'm going to start with the disadvantages first. There are some disadvantages to dividing power between state and local authorities. The first is that it requires there to be a lot of government officials. We have over 500,000 elected officials in this country. And one of the things it does is it breeds apathy and fatigue amongst voters. Apathy meaning they just don't care. And voter fatigue, that's a term that describes like they just don't want to play a role in the process anymore. This is a sample ballot from Montgomery County from a couple years back. And I think the average American would walk in here and be pretty intimidated by some of the positions on here. They have no idea what they do. Like, what does the recorder of deeds do? Or the register of wills do? Or the controller for the county? So it makes them sort of become overwhelmed and not want to play a role in the process, which is a negative. It makes them not want to vote. Also, it tends to be a very confusing sort of system. Oftentimes, when the United States deals with an issue for the first time and there's no blueprint to go off of, we don't respond quickly and we don't generally respond effectively. One of the great examples of that is Hurricane Katrina in 2005, in which a massive hurricane hit the city of New Orleans. All levels of government, because they hadn't really dealt with that before, responded very poorly. The national government, the state of Louisiana, the city of New Orleans, the local officials, nobody really knew whose responsibility and what their role was in dealing with this disaster. And unfortunately, because response was slow, citizens in this area died needlessly. Again, it can often be very confusing. Often, allowing states to make up their own policies can breed some selfishness amongst the states and conflict amongst them. Like on the left, look at the map of the legalization policies for marijuana in the United States. Some states like Pennsylvania in the light blue have decided to legalize marijuana for medicinal purposes. Some states like Colorado in the green have legalized it for both recreational and medicinal purposes. But the states in the gray, like like the neighbor to Colorado, Nebraska, they still have it illegal for both purposes. Well, this can breed selfishness and conflict between them. Like Colorado doesn't really care that Nebraska hasn't legalized it. Colorado's legalization policies have worked out economically very well for it. But Nebraska has seen a spike in its driving while under the influence, sort of like traffic stops, and they attribute that to Colorado's policies. Or on the right, think about the COVID responses and how that sort of impacted each state. Some states had mask policies early. Some states opened up early, and how some states have travel bans, and how that sort of breeds selfishness and conflict amongst the states as well. There are definitely some advantages to federalism, though. These are the good things. Like we saw in Federalist 51 when we read it, a compound republic like we have, dividing power between the national government and the states is good because the more times you divide up power, the less of a chance there is of anybody being able to abuse that power. So that's one of the key advantages. Also, if you remember when we read in Brutus, the argument under Brutus was that the United States was just too different and diverse to have one system of government adequately respond to the needs of all citizens. So the benefit of federalism is state and local officials can make decisions that are unique for its sort of like circumstances. You know best what your local community needs, and you have the ability to make decisions that cater to the needs of your individual citizens. And the other thing is, it definitely allows the government to like not necessarily like focus on small stuff. Like you can worry about the big picture and let local communities deal with the smaller issues. Not that those issues aren't important. Like about 10 years ago, Abington put red light cameras in at certain intersections. It was kind of controversial at the time. That's something for the local community to debate, not for the president to have to deal with. Or when the Wawa went in Jenkintown, the super Wawa, some of the neighbors complained about that. That's not something that the president should be dealing with. It's like local officials. Or I think a couple years back in our community, sort of the money that was donated by Mr. Schwarzman to build a new wing in a school. It was a local controversy. That's not something that the president of the United States should have to worry about. So again, it allows the national government to focus on the big picture and for your local communities to focus on the smaller issues.